Now we can go ahead. We can move on to the first main portion of my stream today. And that is my review for The Woman King, chap, which is an historical epic film about the all-female warrior unit of the West African kingdom of the Dahomey. I believe that's how you say it, Chad. Please correct me. You know, I might not get all these terms right, but it's set during the 1800s, thinking like in the 1820s, 1825, and where you have this one character, this female general, chat, played by Viola Davis, who's been training this next generation of this all-female warrior army, chat, and they're some of the absolute best in the world, and certainly in the continent of Africa. But they're dealing with the goddamn white man, chat, and the slave trade, but also dealing with many troubles and tribulations that have been affecting their own community and their own kingdom, Chad. They, too, have participated in the slave trade. Because that's one of the things I wanted to actually jump into of this movie, you know? Because there's you have a lot of people out there saying a lot of different things about this film. The first things I was hearing, I know Joe brought this up recently, at TIFF and a lot of the film festivals that it's been at right now, people have been praising it, been loving it, and it's a huge crowd pleaser. Everyone's praising the performances and the aesthetic and the score, and everyone's like, oh, it sounds great. But then I've also been hearing from a lot of other people have been contacting me, I haven't even seen the film yet. Why are you reaching out to me? Saying, Chris, you don't understand. This movie is promoting a false narrative. It's very historically inaccurate, and it's glorifying this specific African kingdom that participated in the slave trade. And I was like, oh, shit. I just don't, I always heard about, you did have these communities and these kingdoms and these nations in Africa which actively participate in the slave trade and help send all these different African people around the world. And then they lived out their lives as slaves, and so did their various descendants. But I didn't know anything about this specific tribe. I'm a little unfamiliar with this, with the history of these people. Listen, watching the movie, so I kind of went. I'm like, all right, a lot of people are telling me different things. A lot of people are mad. A lot of people are happy about this film. I was like, let me just go in and let it wash over me, and I'll come up with my own opinions, chat. First thing I want to say, they address all of that in this movie, chat. Like the Dahomey, the kingdom of the Dahomey, they address all the stuff and how they participated in the slave trade. You really have where Viola Davis, who plays this general, her character name is General Naniska. She's very much against it now. She's like, all right, I'm not about this. We're not about this. We can't keep doing this. This is going to destroy our community and our civilization and our way of life. And you have other people within the movie that are like, nah, we're going to keep doing this. We want to appease the Europeans. And so you have that conflict throughout the movie. But they are addressing the very thing that people are criticizing the movie for. So it just makes me realize, okay, the people that are criticizing the movie for that aspect, they're not actually... They haven't seen the film, so they don't actually know that's what they're talking about. So it's just a little weird. It doesn't come across to me as earnest. Listen, I'll tell you right now, all the various historical epics that people love and that we've gotten for decades, chat. Whether it be whether it be The Gladiator, whether it be Braveheart, you go ahead and pick. They are filled to the brim with historical inaccuracies. And yet those movies are typically, praised. Now, obviously, slavery is an incredibly touchy subject, to say the least. But this movie, I think, does do a good job, for the most part, in my honest opinion, of addressing those things and what the Dahomey were also doing. Again, I don't know how... Listen, it's not going to be as accurate as obviously everyone wants it to be. Everyone has, a certain level they want with their accuracy, but also at the same time, when you're a filmmaker and you're a writer, this is an issue. Even I have issues with this. You come to a weird crossroads. Do you want to be so specific with the historical accuracy, but then it doesn't become interesting, or do you want to dramatize little things so it becomes more interesting and engaging for the audience? It's a hard it's a difficult tightrope, to walk across, chat. And so I don't, that's why I don't envy the filmmakers or the writers that delve in this kind of material, because you're going to piss someone off. But listen, from my own experience with this film, watching it, I felt like they did a pretty good job. I was entertained, and I thought they were respectful with the material, but they also were going like, hey, we participated in this too, and we should all be ashamed, for it. I was like, okay, that's good. I'm glad they did that, because the way some people have been describing this movie is like, oh, they're not covering that at all. It's like, yeah, they kind of are. I mean, no, not kind of. They are covering it. So, there's some misinformation going on out there, Chad. People are just, they're making statements and they're being mad just for the sake of being mad. Just hey, listen. All I would say to those people, however you're gonna think it. I'm not gonna tell you how to think differently, but just go into the movie and at least watch it, and so then you can actually stand on, the same ground as the same people who have actually seen it. At least give it a chance. That's all I'll say, chap. But aside from the historical accuracy, the historical inaccuracy, chat, what do you want to say? I have to tell you, I think this is a very good historical epic film. This is going to be a very big crowd pleaser this year, chap. I think, much in the same way as something like, there's examples I already brought up, like Ridley Scott's Gladiator, or Mel Gibson's Braveheart, chat. I feel like this movie is going to be one of those things that people are going to look to and go like, yeah, this is how you do a historical epic war movie. Because it's funny, because we don't often get a lot of these films anymore. I can't think of too many, because it's not exactly this huge $100 million budget film. It's definitely not like an indie movie. It's very much in between. I think it has about a $50 million budget. And they use the money quite well for the most part. They're not doing these huge, wide, sweeping, shots of this massive battle, but they do showcase a lot of battles, and they are bloody, and a lot of them are pretty well choreographed, in my opinion. And the aesthetic of the movie is great. It's very gritty. It's very dirty. It's gory, chat. I mean, Viola Davis is scary. In this film, you buy her as this general, as this warrior leading her various other warriors into battle against all sorts of different people, Chad, and it is very effective. She is extraordinarily intimidating. I think this is going to be regarded as, at least for right now. I mean, she's never bad. I'm trying to think. Has Viola Davis ever been listen? Well, I mean, yeah, she's been in bad movies, but I don't think she's ever given a bad performance before, Chad. She always brings 110%, and I feel like there's a lot of passion. She brought a lot of passion in this film, and it speaks volumes because she totally sells herself as this warrior general. She does. She's excellent in the film. But the other thing about it, too, is, even though, yes, this is the war movie, it's addressing this very tumultuous, very controversial period of human history, there is this softness to it. And there is they do have these scenes where there is some softness to her, and then where they do have that drama where it's not constantly going into the action all the time. And we actually see that with a lot of the other supporting characters in the film, the other warriors that she commands in the movie. I think another thing people are going to be talking about in this film is the score. I forget let me see, the guy who does the score to this movie, who does the music, Terrence Blanchard, excellent. I think I would not be surprised if this is nominated for a whole bunch of various awards from various, academies or whatever for Best Original Score this year. He does a fantastic job with that, Chad. What you would honestly expect from an historical epic movie. And also, I would say the movie, for the most part, it moves at a pretty good pace. If I have any issues, there is, because they do have a lot of characters in the film, and most of them are pretty interesting, and I'll get to them in a second. But there are a few subplots to me that are I don't know why we're kind of focusing on this. They feel a little superfluous or kind of unnecessary at this point. There's this whole subplot with John Boyega with one of his wives that kind of goes nowhere. There's a romance in the film. I'm thinking like we don't really. I don't think I mean, for whatever reason, always in these historical epics, they always feel the need to have a romance, and even most of the time, it's like you're just kind of dragging this down. It's kind of taken away from the main plot itself. It kind of goes nowhere too, and this is I think this is just a common problem that a lot of these historical epics have. That especially the ones that are overproduced, is that they can sometimes feel a little sappy and saccharine and not as earnest. And there was not too many, but there were a few times where it's like, okay, you don't really need this, when the music is swelling and someone's like, oh, it's like, okay. Like let's get back to the nitty gritty details of this film. Like you're overselling yourself. It's almost like you're trying too hard, but that's a common problem. But it doesn't happen too often throughout the film. But I did notice it a few times. And again, I think the cast, like I said, Viola Davis, incredible, as she always is. You completely buy her as this general. She sells it. She does her own stunts. Like even like you look at I like the production design for this movie. I mean, everything looks beautiful. I love just the historical setting, Chad. Africa in the 1820s is very interesting. But like even with for her suit and like what she wears in the battle, but I even like how they use the makeup in the film. Like you notice like all these scars and scratches like on her shoulders, on her abdomen, on her back, Chat, from all her countless battles. It's like it just really sells the aesthetic and clearly showcases like, oh, she is a veteran of numerous battles outside of Viola Davis in the film. I really liked. Now some of these, forgive me if I mispronounce some of these names. We have the character of Maui, who's like this new recruit who wants to join the army, and she's played by Thuso Mbedu. I think that's how you say her name. I think she's very good. She's that character who you're going through the training montages with. She wants to constantly prove herself, and I mean that's a character you're easily invested in. And she does a great job selling that. She has a special relationship with this character played by Lashana Lynch. I named Agojie. I think that's how you say him, Agojie. I really like their relationship. She takes like kind of a shine to Maui and is especially protective of her. And I just love the dynamic that they had throughout the entire movie. And then they all get time with Viola Davis as well. But I really especially liked their dynamic. I think this is also just a nice return to form for Lashana Lynch because I think like the last movie I saw her in was was the James Bond film No Time to Die, and I just didn't think she was used very well. I didn't really like the dialogue that she was given. Here she's much better, I thought. And then a lot of people have been asking, well, what about John Boyega? John Boyega's in the movie. He's in the movie. He's interesting position. He's this new king, this King Gezo, and he's caught in a kind of a precarious situation where he's trying to appease his people, but at the same time he's trying to appease all these rich white European people at the same time by giving them slaves. So he's like, how do I do this? I don't know. He's very much out the focus, but he does a good job. I think he does a good job. He's not going to be the guy people are going to be talking about at the end of the day when you walk out of this movie. You're going to be more focused on Viola Davis or Thuso, I can't say her name, Mbedu, and Lashana Lynch. Like that's what you're going to be talking about. But he's good. He holds his own in the movie, in my opinion. You have the bad guy. You have the bad guy whose name I didn't even bother to bring up, chap. But he is evil. He's evil. He's white. And he wants slaves. Like that's his thing. That's what he does. Also, listen, if you are a racist piece of shit, you are not going to like this movie because they kill a lot of white people in this film. And also a lot of black people too who are helping with the slave trade. So if that bothers you, you ain't going to like this. and it's brutal and it's graphic and it's grisly and it works very well. Again, it's very, very crowd pleasing it's a very crowd pleasing movie in my opinion, chap. But yeah, outside of a couple of subplots I feel like kind of go nowhere or kind of superfluous and unnecessary, and it sometimes becomes sappy, which always happens. I don't know why. I wish they would stop with these kind of historically, these historical epics. That always seems to happen. They're like, okay, we're gonna have the sappy moments, like not necessary. Okay, we're doing it, fine. But those are few and far between. For the most part, I think the movie works very well. I don't know if it's going to be like one of those films that's going to be on my top 10 list this year, maybe my top 20, but I still think it's a very good movie, exploring a time period in history that we don't often see in theatrically released movies. I think that's kind of cool. So if I were to give this like a rating, I don't know, like maybe on the double toasted scale, Chad, I'd probably give it somewhere maybe like a low full price. Give it like a low full price on the double toasted scale. I think it's very enjoyable. I think most people are going to really dig this film. But that's just my opinions on the movie, Chad. What about you guys? What did you think? What did you think of The Woman King, Chad?